All right, so if you can also follow along yourself in your browser by following the link that Sean just shared, and I can already see loads of cursors appearing in Miro. I thought I would just quickly give everybody a rundown of how to actually use Miro in case you haven't. So you can move around. I think by default you're possibly in the pan tool, and you can see, like on my screen, I've got a little hand cursor, so that allows me to move around. So you can drag to move around. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard, and you can switch into like a manipulation mode with the arrow, the select sort of cursor, or the V shortcut. And that lets you move things, resize things. In particular, you'll probably want to place some sticky notes because we're going to be asking you to do lots of that. So that's the sticky note icon in the toolbar. And once you've placed the sticky note, you can type text into it and you can resize it. You can also change the color and the size with small, medium, and large. So we'll have a go at doing that. Yay, well done. First sticky note. I love it. That's really cool. Obviously, everybody can edit everybody else's sticky notes, so just try to be respectful of stuff that people have put in, and we'll have a go at this. So if I move across to the next one, and I'll pull everybody towards me as a bit of a practice, and also to get to know where people are joining us from, I'd be interested in knowing where everybody's come from. So if you want to pop a sticky note onto the map, near where you are, you don't need to type anything into it, but it'd just be interesting to see where people are from. You might need to make your sticky note super small, because otherwise I think we're all going to get the whole country is going to get covered in sticky notes. But I'm in Liverpool, so I've just put mine right next to Liverpool. And feel free to express yourself with the color of your sticky note as well if you want to. If you've got a scroll wheel, you can zoom in, I think, with the scroll wheels, or you can use the zoom control in the bottom right corner of your screen. There's a plus and a minus next to the percentage. So we'll give you a minute or so to do this, I think. Where are people coming from so far then? What does it look like, Sean? Kendall, Carlisle, I like it.
Yeah, we have like a nice spread. I'm gonna put my I'm down here in Cardiff, so I'm gonna get mine as close as I can.
I love the arrow. This is brilliant. We love people who don't follow instructions. It's great. Bit of individuality there. Amazing. I included Shetland Islands in a little inset box, hoping maybe that someone might be joining us from Shetland, but I don't think anybody will. But that was wishful thinking on my part. Okay, cool. I think we should probably move on to the next one. In the canvas next to that, which is number 2, and I'll just, if everybody doesn't mind, I think I'll just bring everybody over to me so we can get cracking on this one. It'd be kind of interesting to know what you do, what your role is, why are you interested in climate action plans and the climate emergency. And if you want to pop a sticky note into here, Sean, what was the second thing we were going to ask people to do in their sticky note? Was it?
Well, if you have maybe an affiliation to an organisation, that would be interesting for us to know if you're happy to share that, or the kind of a bit more detail on the nature of your role. That would also be really interesting.
I'll pop one in here.
I know people often straddle these categories. Feel free to make multiple post-its if you're a campaigning councillor, for instance. I know a few of those.
Cool. Awesome. Nice to see a good a couple of councillors, couple of campaigners, couple of council officers. Thanks for joining. I wondered whether everybody is going to put a sticky note in resident as well, because we all live somewhere. But I thought, no, okay, you've all been very sensible. That's good. I like it. Awesome. Okie doke. How are we all feeling? Have we mostly written down or got what we do and where we are? I think we probably have. Cool. Amazing. Let's move on to the next one. So we've got a couple of questions for you, and I think this might be interesting to everyone else on the call too, as to what challenges and what everybody's relationships are with climate action plans. But it's particularly useful for us to know too. So again, with some sticky notes, how about you pop some answers into here, into part 3? I'll just bring everybody to me again. Of what part of creating a climate action plan did you find most challenging? That's for those people who've been involved with either their own council creating an action plan, or have been involved in scrutinising or commenting on their council's action plans if they're not a council officer or a councillor.
Yes, I'd say be general about the challenges you're feeling around. Yeah, don't feel you can't contribute.
Yeah. Might also be challenges, yeah, as a resident or as a researcher or a journalist. Like, what are the challenges in getting hold of an action plan or understanding it, making the most out of it? I'll give you a minute or so to fill these in. This is amazing. I love it. It's just like all coming together before our very eyes. So what have we got here? We got the old chestnut of not enough resources or people or money. Yep. Funding. Getting buy-in across the authority is a really interesting one. And maybe some of the internal politics within the organisation there. National policy framework is a really good point, and what sort of support you can expect from larger organisations, from central government. That's one of the things we'll be working on as MySociety with Climate Emergency UK as well, on trying to influence some of the policy in this area.
I can see that somebody's put a really interesting one around the kind of overwhelm of the enormity of the scale of the task and how the specialism can contribute in the larger system. Feel free to expand on that. It'd be interesting to know what your specialism might be, because I think local authorities have such an interesting mix of specialisms within them, and sometimes some gaps. So yeah, please feel free to kind of expand on those. Details are really interesting to us, really helpful.
All right. I think maybe while people are finishing off their post-its there, if you've already written your post-it and you're ready to move on, the next question below this, how about taking a stab at that? Like, what if you're within a council, how do you currently learn from what other councils are doing? Does that influence the decisions you're making, what goes into your plans, how you construct your plans? And if you're not within a council, then how do you learn what best practice is, or what you should be expecting from your council?
I guess it'd also be interesting to know if there are any obstacles you've experienced to sort of learning from other councils and what they're doing.
Again, with this one, feel free to get really specific if you want to. I mean, I know a lot of the organisers of today's event have fantastic resources, like Anthony was mentioning earlier, the resources hub that the Centre for Alternative Technology have. But yeah, if there is a particular place that you kind of
It's nice to see the Climate Emergency UK Action Plan review getting a mention. An initiative close to our hearts. All right, and I feel bad moving people on, but there's lots of stuff we want to talk about. We want to leave some space at the end as well to get a discussion going. So if you've already placed your post-it notes down, how about trying the third one in this row? So about engagement, like how have you or would you like to engage the public in creating the action plans? Or if you're not within a council, I guess, Alex, we're interested in knowing how people would expect to engage with the council, how they'd expect to make comments or feed into action plans.
Yep, I agree with that.
I love the feeling of anticipation when all you can see is the blank post-it notes and you're just waiting for the words to appear. Oh, interesting. Climate assemblies. And a people's climate change inquiry. That's interesting. Oh.
I'm curious about the need to do a lot more one. Feels like there's stuff to kind of unpack there. I'd be curious to know in particular if that's kind of to do with frequency, maybe to sort of having more regular engagement, or whether it's to do with the breadth of the engagement, trying to ensure that everybody's voices are heard. Really curious about that one.
All right, we'll give you a few more seconds, I think, to finish up your thoughts there. This Miro board will be open as well after this this session. So if there's stuff you want to come back and add to, or you want to come back and read through other people's contributions, you'll still be able to do that. You can scroll down either by making sure you're in the hand mode, i.e. just press the V button until your cursor turns to a hand, and you can drag to pan around, or I think you can use the arrow keys, but it's quite slow using the up and down, left and right arrow keys. All right, let's move on to the next one. Again, with a post-it note, what we're kind of interested in doing here is, like, you've got 3 votes, let's say 3 sticky notes that you can pop on. You don't need to write anything in the sticky notes. They can be quite small. What would you say the most important factors? You could put all 3 of your sticky notes, your 3 votes, on one of these bubbles, or you could spread them around. What do you think are the most important factors in identifying councils that are similar to yours in terms of climate policy? So kind of building on the question we asked earlier about how do you find other councils to compare yourself to, or find out what other councils are doing? How would you decide which councils your council is like? What do you think is most useful for that comparison?
Well, in anticipation of the something else column, that looks great. There
Yeah,
are too many options
exactly.
here. No one's going to go for something else, but no, everyone has.
Everyone has. We're really interested in what the something else would be. So yeah, leave a note in your post-it notes as to what that something else might be. Cool.
So just to give some background to this, part of what we're trying to wonder about is how do we suggest to people who use the site which other ones are worth looking at the same time to compare, or what would be good things to learn from. So it's about trying to like spread the learning.
Okay, I think we're starting. I can see a few cursors just hanging around, which is good. Having a read. So that was the end of our kind of session on gathering some information from you.
Thank you.
our resident research and data nerd is very happy with the amount of information you've just provided. So that's given us lots to chew over, and it's also given me a bit of a steer on which features to point out in the Climate Action Plan Explorer. So I'm going to give a quick demo of that. We'll also pop a link into the chat. Hopefully Sean can do that too, if you want to poke around yourself. But if you want to switch back to Hopin and watch my screen, I can sort of give you a bit of a demo. So this is the what we're calling at the moment the Climate Action Plan Explorer, and we've been working with Climate Emergency UK to collect together as many climate action plans and other types of like strategy documents, pre-plans, drafts, things like that, all into one place. And this has been based on talking to lots of different people from within councils and councillors, researchers, journalists over the last year or so. But it's still very early days for this tool. A couple of us on the call were involved in making it, but you should feel we're all ears as to what you like or dislike about it, or what you think we should do next. So after this quick little demo, I think we're going to jump into a slightly more free-form discussion as to what you'd like to see maybe and what we could add to it. But to begin with, obviously, as you can probably guess, you can find what's happening in your area, and if your area is covered by multiple local authorities, then you can find the particular local authority. So let's search for a postcode in Liverpool, for instance, so both the City Council and the Combined Authority. So in places with two-tier councils, you'd be able to see both. And Liverpool's not a great example at the moment because they haven't quite published their action plan yet. But if I go back to all councils, you can see it. Another way of getting to the councils is by browsing a list. I can't remember whether there was which cities people were from. Let's have a search for Devon, because I'm sure there was somebody from at least one of the Devon councils. Cool. So we've got Devon Council here as the county council, and we've got two documents linked to, both of which are web pages, which is nice. And we also show at the moment nearby councils. One of the things we're experimenting with, and it'd be good to talk about at the end of this session, is other ways you might expect to find the councils. So building on what the stuff that you've just been sharing, in that, how would you find your similar councils? One of the things we've been working on is exploring ways of letting you compare or expand your research out to other councils that are similar to this one. So that might appear there soon. Another thing we show on some of the council pages, let's say Bristol, for instance. We've got emissions data, which at the moment lags a little behind. So this is based on the BEIS emissions data. The latest data, I think, is from 2018 at the moment. We're kind of interested in knowing whether more data like this would be useful to you when you're trying to get more of a full picture of what the council is currently facing and what issues they're facing. And you can also find and link through to just the PDFs. I won't open any of these quite yet because they might be quite big. And another feature that we also enabled us to do is once we collected all these action plans together, one thing that allows you to do is we scrape them all and you can search through them all. So these are the popular searches at the moment. So people have been searching for, say, Green Homes Grant. So which climate action plans include a mention of the Green Homes Grant? 50 of them from the look of it. It'd be kind of interesting to know, like, is that useful to you? What sort of stuff would you search for? Are there other things you would want to look for within the plans? And for any researchers and academics and journalists that were on the call, we also allow you to download just a big zip archive of all of the data we've gathered. And that includes a copy of all of the plans and some metadata as well to help you slice and dice the councils. One thing finally I'll mention is that we're working on adding a few more ways of filtering the list of councils so that you can find a list of ones that are most relevant to you. It'd be kind of interesting again to know, like, how you would expect to do that, what you could see yourself using that for. Sean, can you think of anything else we should mention?
I don't think so. Not off the top of my head. Alex, feel free to come in. But I can see that there are some sort of questions popping up in the chat, which might be quite interesting for us to sort of start exploring. Alex, you've been answering some of those in the chat, but is there anything you wanted to come in on?
Not especially. I mean, it is just especially like the search function. Something I've been wondering is, like, how do you want to subdivide things in your search as well? So are you just looking for terms, or if you're, is the search useful for you if you go look at other people's plans? But also, what kind of ways would you want to restrict that as well? Like, do you want to know about this search term, but only in this area? Or just anything like that in terms of how the search could be more helpful to you, because that seems like one of the more powerful things we can do, but we need to know how.
One thing I was just going to drop into the chat box as well, which was your blog, Alex, on the kind of council comparisons work.
Yeah, sure. So I can talk a bit about that if that's helpful, or we could just leave that to the chat.
I just looking at the Miro board, I saw, that it's really interesting, this how do you identify councils similar to yours. There seems to be a lot of energy around the kind of similar urban rural profile.
Yes, and that's really interesting, because what I found, so Sean's dropped the link in the chat, is I've had a first go at trying to look at the pollution data to put councils in similar groups. And what was really striking is how, not knowing about the urban rural data, it kind of recreated an urban rural split. So I get the feeling that lots of these things will come out, like somebody's population density will often come up with an urban rural split. But that is sort of very interesting. That is what you're put in as the big priority. So it's a good test for us that anything we have should produce an urban rural split, even if we're not basing it on urban rural data.
Thanks, Alex. Serino, we can keep an eye on the chat. There's also, is it worth mentioning this? This final page for people to plump things on.
As well. So I pulled out a couple of things that we're currently looking at implementing. Something that was mentioned when we did our first round of research into this tool was the idea of highlighting sort of exemplary action plans. So a few of you, some of you mentioned already in the post-it notes, the work that Climate Emergency UK has been doing in trying to score action plans. So we'll eventually be building that into this service so that you can see probably a sort of grading of action plans as to how closely they match the climate emergency checklist and their advice. Because we wanted to try and make it a bit easier for people to understand, given this 80-page document, like, is that actually reasonable? Is it sensible? How does it compare to others? So that's something. It would be interesting to know what people think about that, whether there are challenges or pitfalls we should try and avoid there, or whether they're excited for that. A couple of other things we're currently looking at is making it easier to jump into specific bits of the action plans from those search results. It'd be kind of useful to know whether you'd find yourself using that search and what you'd be using it for. And we're also thinking about whether we can try and help build more of a community of practice around this stuff, or trying to feed into the existing networks and communities and support those networks that already exist. So maybe we might look at implementing some sort of communication between officers so that you can more easily get in touch with the person or the team behind a particular council's action plan, if you're another council too, and you want to compare notes or help each other. Or this is a bit more unclear, is whether we allow some sort of officer to citizen or citizen to officer communication. We obviously don't want to open up officers to abuse or a deluge of comms from citizens. It might be that a sort of publication model might be useful. Are there ways that a service like this could help in the consultation process, or in the outward communication from the council? So feel free to pop your comments in the chat on the side there, or in post-it notes. That would be really interesting to know.
Yes, I'm happy to grab it from the chat and put it in the post-its if it's easier for people to do there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bo. One thing I'll just build on a bit from the first things that Zarino talked about there. So as well as the amazing team work that Climate Emergency UK are doing to kind of assess plans in a sort of standardized and like rigorous way, one other idea, it might be that, you know, almost a kind of third-party organizations, kind of trusted third-party organizations might be able to sort of tag certain plans, maybe for having a particularly interesting example of you know, a facet that, like, engagement was one. You know, if a local authority has a really rich kind of engagement element to their plan, is there an organization we can work with who kind of understands that really well, who might be able to kind of tag certain plans so that you can very quickly kind of find those, the needle in the haystack. I'd be really interested, you know, it'd be really helpful in my work to know, are there organizations we should be talking to about doing that kind of work, who are already, you know, very trusted and sort of fair really in the way that they would go about doing that, and have that sort of depth of expertise about things that you would be interested in finding out about.
The suggestion of a burn down chart is really interesting to see there. I don't know whether the person who wrote that wants to comment on it more in the chat. I think one of the next logical questions leading on from that, in my mind, would be, where would we get that data from? Do we expect the council officers to provide that, or are we going to need to try and collect that? I think that's one of the challenges we're facing with this tool, is obviously that there's a sort of dearth of useful, usable data out there on lots of this stuff. So obviously people like Climate Emergency UK are trying to gather it as part of the scoring process, and have been doing the same thing for emergency declarations and stuff over the last few years. But if anybody knows of any ways we could get hold of this data, or sources that we could find it from and combine it with, that would be really useful too. I like the big pink post-it note here about reaching out to authorities to prompt them to provide more documents, or the latest documents, and whether councillors can support that. Those are two things that are right in the top of our to-do list, is working out a sort of more sustainable way to get this information and updates as they come out. I think we may be preaching to the converted here when we're talking to councillors. These are all the people on this call are going to be the ones who really care about this and would probably provide updates on their action plans. I wonder whether people have ideas as to how we could encourage the less involved, less incentivized councillors, council officers to provide that information and provide those updates. Cool. The point there I like about plans aren't always helpful to fully find out what councils are delivering. That's another thing on our radar, and we've been talking to the Climate Emergency UK folks about how we move from just the plans to action and measuring what actions are actually being taken.
Just digesting some of these comments. Yeah, also that makes me think a little bit about a question in a lot of our minds about the kind of other kinds of plans that may actually be sort of quite important in climate terms, that might sit alongside a climate action plan. One of those is thinking about the planning system and how much kind of gets decided through that, the actions kind of shaped by it. So that's a vague thought that we have about something important that isn't our focus at the moment, but that we might need to be thinking a bit more about the relationship between these things.
The 2 points here on the side about whether the action plan itself should be the focus or whether there are other documents or resources that provide more context is it's a difficult balance. On the one hand, we want to try and provide a single place for people to get this information, and that's mostly what the action plan should be. But at the same time, lots of these things might be included in other documents. There might be more detail in other documents. It'd be interesting to know whether people can think of documents that are missing from the site that they really wish were available. And to answer the question that's in the post-it note there, we do include links to the council websites, and if they've got an action plan like page on their website, then that might be included, but not for all councils. But we don't have a problem with including those alongside action plans that are documents or whatever. Some councils actually do publish their action plans as just web pages, which is really cool too. Awesome. There are some teeny tiny post-it notes here that I'm gonna zoom in to be able to read those.
Sorry, those are ones I've stolen from the chat, so I was just getting them into the.
Perfect. Alex is being industrious in the background. I love it. Cool.
Interesting one there from Alex Stewart in the chat about biodiversity. One of the earlier sessions I joined with Lewis Council planning, head of planning, I think, and the councillor there, talking about having kind of ecologists in-house and the importance of that for kind of climate action plans. So yeah, really interesting overlap. Hard to really think about those things separately, really.
Yes, Emily, I think the mirror is available afterwards. I think that's right, isn't it, Zarina? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to come up to the final few minutes of this session. Don't stop contributing if you're still going. But yeah, just to kind of reiterate that this link, you'll be able to access the Miro board for I'm thinking at least a week. So you've got plenty of time to kind of mull this over, have a play around, with the tool, and hopefully that will spark some more thoughts. Maybe even share that with colleagues. I can imagine that yeah, this is there's so much sort of collaboration at the heart of this work. Please do feel free to kind of share it far and wide, and encourage people to kind of add their thoughts once they've had a chance to see it too. I'm just going to I'll say now to make sure that we don't run out of time and miss it, but that we're really grateful for your your time, your thoughts, your input on all of this is hugely helpful for us. We're there are lots of things that we could be doing, but we really want to make sure that what we're doing is actually useful, and there's no better way of kind of understanding that than hearing directly from folks like yourselves. I'll also make sure that I don't forget, add a link to our climate program. A page on our website tells you a bit more about our climate program, so you've got a bit of background there. And right down the bottom of that page, you'll see there's a email subscription box. So if you're not already signed up to our email newsletters, please feel free to subscribe, and that'll be a good way of kind of keeping in touch with the work as it evolves. And if go on.
No, sorry, I thought you'd wrapped up there. I was going to say, if you have longer thoughts, we're always happy to be emailed about stuff. So I think it's climate@mysociety.org, and we please tell us things. We don't know anything. Please tell us everything.
Exactly. I'll pop that in there as well. And I saw some people sort of sharing links in the chat box after I'd mentioned, who are the organizations, that question that I had about, who is it that are really kind of trusted third-party organizations that we could work with. I mentioned it right at the start. It's very early days for me in my outreach and networks role. And similarly, there are a huge number of people and organizations that I could try and speak to, but I love to try and prioritize those people that are already sort of very well respected by the community of people who are kind of working on this challenge, and we can try and make sure that we're working in a sensible way with them, so we're not kind of reinventing any wheels, and that we're kind of plugging into to the work and those conversations that are already going on. A flurry of messages into the chat box. Anything else, Zarino and Alex, you'd like to add? I think we got a couple of minutes left.
I'm happy. This has gone really well for me. So
yeah, it's been great. Thanks to everybody for all your input and your comments. Really useful. All right, cool. I think we're got a minute or so left. Amazing. We're going to go through all of these post-it notes and probably tidy them up a little bit over the next few days. And I imagine probably write at least a blog post about it. It'd be really cool to see a summary of what everybody said.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Of course, if you final plug for the newsletter, if you want to know when that blog goes live, do sign up, and you'll be the first to know about it.
I don't know this, but we've done stuff like this before. Make a distinction between the size of organisation that we ask this question to, if that makes sense. So if you have an annual turnover of less than X, so that might kind of get us out of the situation where we're asking for loads of financial. So.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys. That's been really interesting and engaging for everybody. Fantastic to see so much great information coming out. Have you guys got an expo booth to point people to as well? No? Okay.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, somebody's just shared the link again in the sidebar. Brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah, more information on our website.
Yeah.
Get in touch.
People know where to find you. Again, thank you very much, all three of you. That's been a really engaging and useful session.
Cool, thank you.
I hope that's plenty to build on over the next weeks and months. I suspect it will be. Thank you everyone who's joined this session and engaged so actively. And I hope you enjoy the last half hour or so of the conference. Thank you.